And a warm welcome everyone to our lecture online today, and myself streaming from Thailand and everybody else, I believe, in Melbourne town. And we're going to work and discuss the Yoga Sutras today, which is a very important part of this journey, of this work that we do as yogis. Can anyone tell me what the Yoga Sutras are? Any idea? The top of your curly heads.
Is it the movements?
Say that again.
Is it the actual movements, the asanas? Is it the actual movements?
No.
Or is it just the way to live?
Well, actually, in a way, it incorporates that, but it's a little bit more than just that. Anybody else? Okay, well, the Yoga Sutras are essentially it's a text, and it's the you could say it's like probably the most important text for us yogis. There are many texts which are important. So I think we looked at the Bhagavad Gita the other week with Amy. And so that's a very important spiritual text, which, the Bhagavad Gita is kind of like the classic spiritual text for all Hindus, in a sense. For all most people in India will have read or will have been taught, or at least know of the Bhagavad Gita. It's kind of like almost like the equivalent of the Bible in India. The Yoga Sutras is more like the spiritual text designed for yogis, for yoga. It's the essence of yoga within this book. And a sutra is like a thread. It's a thread, often referred to like as a silken thread. So it's something that connects one thing to another. So the idea of a sutra is it's an aphorism, which means like a poetic encapsulation of the essence of what needs to be expressed. So the Yoga Sutras were written in Sanskrit. Sanskrit is the ancient language of India, and it's attributed to the sage Patanjali. Patanjali is the sage who wrote a couple of very important treatises. Treatises, is that what they're called? Treatises meaning, like compendiums. So he wrote one on I believe on language itself, one on Ayurveda, and then his most important, well, not so important, but most popular one is the Yoga Sutras. So there's the language sutras, the Ayurvedic sutras, and then the Yoga Sutras. So the Yoga Sutras are what interests us the most. If we were to study Ayurveda, Ayurveda is the Indian natural medicine sort of path, then that could be interesting to read that. And I'm sure the language sutras would be interesting too. But for us yogis, the Yoga Sutras really encapsulates the essence of yoga. And in a sense, it's the ultimate yoga manual. And this was written anything between 500 BC to 200 AD. You know, there's um, different ideas on when exactly Patanjali was around, but um, but that is the sort of time frame that we're given. Somewhere, anywhere from, let's say, around the time of Buddha. Buddha was around about that 500 BC time to the time of Jesus, or maybe a little bit after. So we don't know exactly, but it was definitely, they've definitely been around for a good couple of thousand years. So a pretty damn ancient text, and we're lucky that we have the, as far as we know at least, we have the actual um, the actual original writings of this wisdom in Sanskrit. I can't remember exactly how many sutras there are, but there's not a whole lot in a sense. Like if they were all written out just one by one, you could probably put them just on one big page, big A3 page. You'd see them all across there. Yet when we try to actually understand them, then we need, something like that, a nice thick book, which, yeah, if they're all just laid out, they'd only be a few pages really. But when we read the Yoga Sutras, and really any ancient spiritual texts, particularly from the tradition of India, then the approach is usually you have the original text is written, the Yoga Sutra, in this case the Sutra. So originally it's in Sanskrit, so it's another way of writing altogether, another type of script. Then you have the literal translation in English, and then you have the transliteration. So then you have and the commentaries. So for one sutra, which might just be, say, just one line, you might end up having two whole pages to try and actually understand what's being said there, what the essence of that sutra is. So pretty um, in-depth stuff, and we're just doing this one lecture today to take a little glimpse into the sutras. As a yogi on your 200-hour teach training course, you're not expected to read and understand the whole compendium of the Yoga Sutras. However, you are expected to have a little bit of an understanding, a bit of an overview of what they're about. And then this becomes one of your life's kind of missions is to pick through it over the years. Is to always have a copy with you. Yoga Sutras, Upanishads, and Bhagavad Gita. These are kind of like the classic texts that you want to have a copy of. You want to be able to, over the years, just familiarize yourself and dive into these wisdom teachings, and yeah, and it can take a lifetime. It depends on your dedication. I still haven't, to be honest, read the whole thing back to, from front to back. Read bits and pieces and studied different aspects of it, but I'm yet to read the whole thing. So that just gives you an idea that you're not expected to read it all, to know it all. However, do have a copy, and do give yourself that sort of mission that over the years that's something that might be worth investigating. um, yeah. So, actually, who has a copy of that with them? right now? Anyone?
Mm.
No, just Christina. Right. Let me just see quickly if I can find maybe a copy online. Okay, I have found a copy. See how this works out. What I might do is I'll just put this in the chat. Okay, there's a link in the chat to. I just saw that as a way that we can view it online. So if I refer to, let's say, a certain page, hopefully there's a way that we just find the page there. See how that goes. But I have a few other things to share anyway. So let's start. Actually, I'm going to start with the first two sutras, which is kind of where you want to start, in a sense, at the beginning. So if you do have a copy, or alternatively, if you can find it in that thing online, it's page 48 in this book, and that's where it begins. And the first Yoga Sutra So consider that Sanskrit is a language of vibration. It's a vibratory language. So when people in ancient times, particularly even now, if someone really understands Sanskrit and studies it in depth, then they learn how to sing Sanskrit. It's in a sense it's a sung language. This is one of the magical things about it, that it's a language of vibration. So we know that we are this vibratory field of energy. So particularly through the pranamaya kosha, where we have all our chakras, and in particular the throat chakra, which is the chakra of expression, of being able to speak our truth. And it's where our voice box is. So when we sing, when we chant, we're oscillating and vibrating at the throat center. So the Yoga Sutras is Amy's joining us too, I think.
I'll have to have one day.
Hello.
Let's just have one for the call.
Hi, Mickey. Is it?
Hello, Tony.
Hi, Mickey. How's your Thailand going?
Yeah, really well, mate. Good to see you.
Can you hear me?
See you. I can hear you. Can you hear me? Can you hear
Yeah,
me?
very
Yep.
clearly.
Awesome.
Yes, I can.
Yeah. Okay.
Fantastic.
Oh, let's see. There.
Great to see you. Hello, Amy. Hello, everybody at Summer Healing.
Hi. Hi. Yes. How's Thailand?
It's pretty hot.
Yeah.
Don't.
Yes.
Keep that to yourself, please.
Pick the right day to say it.
Is it a bit cool there? Is
Today's freezing. Today's freezing.
it?
Miserable.
Well, sending you some of my warm vibes right now.
Oh, thank you.
So we're discussing the ins and outs of the Yoga Sutras. Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, the classic text, which is essentially the text which outlays the essence of yoga. So there are many ancient spiritual texts, such as the Upanishads and the Bhagavad Gita. And you've looked at the Bhagavad Gita. We looked at the Upanishads too, I believe, some of you. The Upanishads
Yes.
kind of like expressing the essence of Advaita Vedanta, the non-dual philosophy of India. The Bhagavad Gita also encapsulates a lot of the yogic wisdom, both from that non-dual perspective, but also from a karma yogi, bhakti yogi essence. But the Yoga Sutras is really the essence of yoga from the point of view of Raja Yoga. It encapsulates the other aspects of yoga too, to some degree. But Raja Yoga, the kingly yoga of going beyond the mind. So Raja means kingly, and it's referring to the crown essence of our beingness. So in that sense, it's talking about the mind as sort of the ultimate outwardly expressive part of our being, and the idea of Raja Yoga is to realize the truth by understanding, first and foremost, understanding our minds, understanding how the mind works, and then ultimately to go beyond the mind to realize our true nature. That's, you could say, in a nutshell, the essence of Raja Yoga. And so Patanjali really is, through the Yoga Sutras, is giving us that wisdom, that understanding of this essence of Raja Yoga, of understanding how our minds work, and then what this path of yoga is, and how it can bring us to realize our true nature, which is what yoga is all about, isn't it? It's realizing who we are, realizing our true nature, realizing our essence. So these sutras were written in Sanskrit, a vibratory language which was often sung in a sense. So even just the fact that we recite the sutras, just by reciting them, by singing them or chanting them ourselves, already brings us into some kind of alignment with some of the essence of what they're expressing, just from that vibratory point of view. So it's almost like, job half done or quarter of the way done just by reciting them. But then ultimately it's understanding them intellectually, and then finally experientially, So intellectually, by understanding what's being expressed, what's being said, what's being communicated, and then experientially by actually doing the work, which often can be said that's the Kriya aspect. Kriya yoga. Kriyas, we often hear about Kriyas as these kind of exercises or these these actions, these these Kriya could be some asana, it could be some pranayam, it could be incorporating mudras, incorporating all the various aspects of what we understand as our yoga practice. But it's where an effort's made, something's done, to actually make some kind of effort to work on our body, on our breath, on our minds, to ultimately then have the experience of yoga. So we were just about to get to the first Yoga Sutra. And here we are. So page 48 of this book, if you have it, Light on the Yoga Sutras. For the first Yoga Sutra, which is 1.1, it says, Atta Yoganusasanam. Atta Yoganusasanam. And that's it. Simple. That's Atta Yoganusasanam. So what does that mean? It's like it's just the introduction. It's just basically saying, well, here's yoga. That's all. Here it is. But actually, when you start to look into it, it's kind of a lot deeper than just that. So it could be literally translated as something like, with prayers for divine blessings, now begins an exposition of the sacred art of yoga. With prayers for divine blessings, now begins an exposition of the sacred art of yoga. That's sort of like the translation. Now, the transliteration is quite in-depth, and I'm not going to go into that right now. You can, if you like, in your own time, read that. But what I just want to mention is that the whole idea of this atta essentially means now. It also means auspiciousness. It also means a prayer, a blessing, a benediction, authority, a good omen. These Sanskrit words are packed full of meaning, packed full of juice, and they have so much more meaning and essence than our English language can really understand and express. That's why one little word like atta is all these potential meanings. Now, I'm going to just mute you all so that we can all, so any other sounds aren't going across. But if you do need to butt in and ask or say something, please just go ahead and unmute yourself, yeah? And butt in, it's fine at any time. So this idea of atta, now, what it's really, what I've learned is that what it's really trying to tell us is that, in essence, we have this idea of Vedas and Vedanta. Vedas is knowledge, and Vedanta is kind of like deeper knowledge. And the idea is that Vedas is worldly knowledge. So when we're living in the world, and our Western world is very much revolved around this kind of worldly knowledge, worldly living program. Yeah, we're living in the world, and the ultimate aim is to be successful in life. often our success is measured on this kind of transactional level. You know, what can you do for the world? What can you do for others? And what can you get in return? And so, you know, we go out and we learn, we go to university, we get a good job so we can earn good money, and then, you know, ultimately we're doing good for the world by giving back and doing something worthy to support the world around us. And that's all well and good. That's, you know, it's important to be living in the world and to be transacting ultimately from this idea of a sattvic level. You've got those three gunas that we've mentioned before. Maybe not all of you have done that, but we'll get to that. But the three gunas are the three energetic levels of how we, you know, how we move through the world, through our minds and our bodies, in a sense. So there's the rajas, tamas, and sattva. Raja is the kind of active principle of moving, you know, with action and drive and, you know, all the kind of fiery kind of yang elements of moving out in the world. There's tamas, which is a bit more the chill, taking it easy, often seen as quite lazy, the lazy vibe. But then there's this idea of sattvic, where you find the balance, you find the middle ground, you find the equanimity in a sense. And so the idea is, living in the world, we ultimately strive for this sattvic state of being in balance, of being, you know, having a certain calmness and a certain clarity and a certain way in which we approach things with ease, with love, and with balance. It's really, as an essence. So living in the world, transacting from the sattvic level, is kind of like, you know, most people would agree that that's a good thing to do. It's a good place to be. But there's still this kind of transactional essence. You know, you sort of, your success is often measured, living in the world, by, you know, how much you're earning, how much you're, and also how much you're giving, how you're being successful in this kind of outward expression and outward connection, moving through the world. And that's the essence of Vedas, the word Veda, which means knowledge. So you need to gain knowledge to be able to be successful in life. But then at some point, there can be a rub. And maybe you have all felt that, which might have been what's inspired you to come on this teacher training course. You get to a point in your life where you think, okay, yeah, I can do all of this, I can get a good job, I can have a good house, I can have a nice car, travel the world, I can do all these things. I feel there's something missing. I feel there's something more to life than just this transactional stuff. So this is when we are drawn onto the spiritual path. And when you feel this calling, in a sense, of investigating the mystery of life. You know, what really is my true nature? Who am I really? Why am I here? Really? Am I here just to transact and, you know, have a bigger car and a bigger house? Am I here just to, you know, do whatever I'm doing, try to get a better job? And what is the true purpose of my life? Why am I here? Why is anyone here? And who are we really? And how did all this come about? How is this actually all happening? The mystery of life. So when you really start to ask these questions, you're essentially being drawn onto the spiritual path, because the answer simply is it needs to be investigated through your connection to your spirit, your spiritual nature. The spiritual nature takes you into the truth of who we really are. So that becomes Vedanta. This is like the deeper knowledge, the deeper understanding of our true nature. So many people don't really, and never question that. I think everyone questions it to some degree, but never maybe are really drawn to investigate that. But if you are, then you take action, such as, okay, I'm going to go and do a 200-hour yoga teacher training course because I believe that might help me get some answers to my questions. Or simply, I might just look into this thing called yoga. And this is where this first sutra begins to investigate that moment where you've like, okay, I've really exhausted all the possibilities of this worldly life. I've exhausted the idea of, trying to find answers through, looking at Netflix and going to seminars or whatever. Now, I want the answers. I want to know the truth. So now, at this point, you've done whatever work you've done to get to this point where actually it's time to investigate your truth, the truth of who you are. And that's why that first Yoga Sutra is just like, that's it. Now I'm going to expose the essence of yoga. And then, let's just magic this. Then the second sutra, he gives you the answer. He gives you the answer of what it's all about. And then there's shitloads of other yoga sutras after that. But it's kind of like just the summary, or often in a book you have the introduction or the preface or whatever, where you get just an overview of what it's all about. So the second Yoga Sutra is essentially, it's that overview. And it goes like this. Yoga, Chitta Vritti, Nirodha. Yoga, Chitta Vritti, Nirodha. Yoga is the cessation of movements in the consciousness. Yoga is the cessation of movements in the consciousness. That's what Iyengar translates as. I've also seen it as yoga is the cessation of the fluctuations of the mind. Yoga is the cessation of the fluctuations of the mind. So what Patanjali is basically saying is that yoga, and what does yoga mean? Yoga is this idea of union, this idea of ultimately, I mean, we often say the union of body, mind, and breath, or body, mind, and spirit. But it's the union of the little me and the infinite me. So the individual consciousness and the universal consciousness. So it's where we discover our true nature, yoga, essentially. Our true nature, which is an infinite awareness, infinite consciousness, consciousness itself. God, if you want to call it that, is really who we are. just expressing through this little vehicle of this body, this mind, sitting here on this lovely little chair here in Thailand, and all these other little lovely bodies and minds sitting in their chairs in Melbourne town. But the consciousness that is the essence of all of us, of everything, of all, that it is all encompassing, is our true nature. And we've sort of just come into this illusion that we are this body and this mind, in the sense that that's what we identify with. And that's what locks us into this separation, and ultimately then creates the suffering that we all endure at various levels. And the suffering's predominantly due to our misidentification, identifying with the body and the mind as who we are. Yes, it's a way of the consciousness expressing, having an experience through a unique body and mind, that everyone's bodies and minds is, yet it isn't the truth of who we are. The truth of who we are is consciousness. And consciousness is well beyond this body and this mind. So what Patanjali is saying in the second sutra is that we can discover this yoga, this true nature, this consciousness. We can discover it once we can restrain the movements in our consciousness. Once we can stop all the thinking, all the emotions, all the chatter. And it's endless chatter, isn't it? Always. We're always chatting up there. Always going on, banging on about me and my life. Oh, if only I could do this, and oh, if only I could do that, and if only it was better then, and if only it could, rah-de-rah-de-rah, whatever, chatter you get involved in, we end up identifying with that, and then we suffer because we get caught up in these projections and these could be, would be, might be better, this or that. If only he did this, if only she was that, if only I could have done better here, if only I might be, get that, and all these things, and we suffer because of our misidentification. So Patanjali is just saying simply, once you shut the mind up, once you put the mind on pause, we can realize the magnificence of our true nature, which is truly magnificent. Absolute magic, absolute bliss. And samadhi, it's kind of the eighth limb of yoga. Samadhi is where this bliss is, let's say, experienced. And that's kind of like the ultimate aim. So the aim is to realize our true nature, realize yoga by telling the mind. You can't tell the mind, but by shutting the mind up. So how the hell do we do that? Because we know our minds just don't shut up. So what happens is Patanjali, first of all, says, well, I think we need to first of all understand our minds and how they work. Understand the essence of the mind. So basically, Patanjali goes into a whole spiel of psychology, which has many parallels with our modern day psychology. And then he gives us a roadmap. Right. First of all, let's kind of understand this vehicle, this body and this mind. And then a roadmap to be able to realize this essence of who we are, realize our true nature. And what's the roadmap? The 8 limbs of yoga. So the 8 limbs is the essence of this practice that we do. The 8 limbs is what yoga is, essentially. It's just giving us the formula. It's the formula of yoga. So we often come to yoga thinking that yoga is just asana, the physical practice, which by and by is a beautiful practice, which we all enjoy, which we all love, because it gives us that strength, that vitality, opens up the body, flexes it, strengthens it. And then by and by it has that effect also on the energetic aspect of our body, and ultimately also on our minds. But we start to realize, once we look into this yoga business, that asana is just actually a really small, tiny element. It's just a means to an end. That asana really is just to make the body strong and supple, and helping to move energy, and in a sense some of the asana itself can also help to calm the mind down. When you come into your shavasana at the end of a yoga class, that this is the closest time where you really start to experience yoga. You really start to relax the mind, ultimately. So, yeah, that's that. Yeah. Let's have a couple of minutes pee break, because some of this is haven't really got into the juice of it yet, but I think it's good just to move the body. I need to fill up my water and have a little pee break. So 2-minute pee break, and we'll be back. So I have a few notes here somewhere. Let's have a look, which give us a bit more of an insight into these sutras. So here we go. The Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, a collection of 196 Sanskrit sutras, 196 of them all up. Aphorisms on the theory and practice of yoga. They were compiled, as I said, somewhere between 500 BC and AD 400, maybe 200, whatever, by the sage Patanjali in India, who synthesized and organized knowledge about yoga from much older traditions. Yoga tradition holds the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali to be one of the foundational texts of classical yoga philosophy. Now, he divided these sutras into 4 chapters. So there's 4 main chapters. These chapters are called padas in Sanskrit, which contain these 196 aphorisms. And the first pada is called Samadhi Pada. Samadhi Pada, which has 51 sutras, refers to a samadhi, the word itself, refers to the state of direct and reliable perception, pramana, where the yogi's self-identity is absorbed into pure consciousness, collapsing the categories of witness, witnessing, and witnessed. So that's what I mentioned before, samadhi as the this sort of byproduct of the practice of yoga, which which is the realization of our true nature, and often referred to as, you know, going into samadhi is going into a place of bliss, because bliss is kind of like what we would describe this true nature ourselves. Samadhi is the main technique the yogi learns by which to dive into the depths of the mind to achieve kaivalya, which means liberation. So this is an interesting thing to understand. Samadhi, the difference between samadhi and kaivalya. So the author describes yoga and then the nature and the means of attaining samadhi. And this chapter contains the famous definition verse, Yoga Chitta Vritta Nirodha. Yoga is the restraint of fluctuations or patterns of consciousness. So this is, I mean, if you're going to learn a couple of sutras, this is one of the ones I would suggest to try and learn. Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha. Because, like I said, it encapsulates the essence. It's like in a sense, you know, I mean, not that we're comparing or judging, but in a sense, as a yoga teacher, if you don't have that, if you don't get that, then, you know, it's what sort of teacher are you as a yoga teacher? You really need to get this. So I encourage you to write it down, put it on your fridge, or by your bedside table, somewhere, that you see this and you learn it. Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha. We don't need to learn Sanskrit. We don't need to know this language. I mean, it's great if we do, but it's not essential. But this Yoga Sutra is kind of pretty essential, I would say. As a yoga teacher, if you're out there teaching yoga, but you don't understand the essence of yoga, then, you know, it's kind of like, well, what are you teaching? And this is one of the sort of issues in the sense of modern day yoga. That there's a lot of yoga teachers out there that are teaching just asana. They don't even maybe even know that sutra. So we don't need to know all the sutras. We don't need to be self-realized. I mean, ultimately that's the aim, but as a yoga teacher, at least to understand this conceptually, this sutra. Yoga is the restraint of fluctuations of the consciousness. Yoga is what is revealed to us once we calm the mind, once we allow the mind, once we're able to restrain the mind. And then, so going back to this difference between samadhi and kaivalya, because the final pada, so we got samadhi pada, sadhana pada, then vibhuti pada, and kaivalya pada. These are the 4 chapters of the Yoga Sutras. And the difference between the samadhi and kaivalya is samadhi is this kind of experience of experiencing our true nature. So the experience of the bliss of dissolving the individual identity. But kaivalya is this liberation. Kaivalya is the true enlightened person. Kaivalya is that we are always in this state of non-dual awareness. We are always in this state of being in our true nature, which is kind of a misnomer in a sense, because we are always in our true nature anyway. But from the sense of the mind having fully realized that beyond any perception of doubt, and just being able to close your eyes and completely dissolve into the oneness, into the magic of our true nature. So in that sense, samadhi can be experienced by all of us, and I'm sure some of you have, whether it's just in a shavasana, whether it's, it's at that moment in shavasana sometimes where the mind actually stops. You're fully relaxed, you've done all this beautiful work, breath work, and you just come to a point where all your worries dissolve, your body dissolves. It's just this beauty, this bliss. So samadhi can be experienced by all of us throughout the day, even just in moments of sitting quietly, having a cup of tea, whatever, pausing, that moment of pause, and stop all the doing and stop all the busyness of the mind, and just allow yourself to just be. That's maybe just a little opening into samadhi, that then when you really dive into that beingness, then samadhi becomes this bliss, this absolute bliss. But the kaivalya is that total liberation. It's the enlightened state. So ultimately, even though, in a sense, the 8 limbs of yoga has samadhi as the end point, there is still more beyond that. There's the sort of culmination of samadhi moving into kaivalya, into full liberation. So that first chapter is really about understanding. It's like kind of like the overview, and there's also within this overview there's a real kind of deep analyzing the mind aspect. So that first chapter does a lot of the mind analysis work. So looking into this idea of chitta. Chitta is consciousness, but chitta from the point of view of having all the individual consciousness, so not consciousness as in the ultimate universal consciousness, but the individual consciousness, meaning our mind, our ego, our memory, all the various facets, our intellectual aspect of our mind, the various facets of our mind stuff, which is called chitta. Chitta. Chitta is the Sanskrit word for our mind stuff. Sometimes we would call that consciousness, but definitely on the individual consciousness level, not the universal consciousness level. So again, the English language isn't designed, in a sense, to be able to fully express it's like someone's decided to do their mowing right now. It's a bit annoying. No, it was a motorbike. Good. Taking off. Phew. So the Sanskrit language really has much better vocabulary, in a sense, to describe all the facets of mind and consciousness. Because we say consciousness, but consciousness can be individual and universal at the same time. No, back again. Sadhana pada. So the next chapter, the next pada, is the sadhana. Sadhana. What does sadhana mean? Sadhana is the Sanskrit word for practice or discipline. And, this is what we do as yogis. When we come to our mats, we're coming to perform our sadhana. So it's another great Sanskrit word to understand, to remember, to know. This word sadhana is our practice. Because often, we say, well, what's yoga? Oh yeah, it's a bit of asana, it's a bit of breath work, a bit of pranayama, it's a bit of meditation. It's kind of all the stuff that we do on our mats, mudras, bandhas, all the various things. So we can put that all as one word. We call it our sadhana, our practice. For one yogi, sadhana might be different to another yogi's. For me at the moment, my sadhana is I'm going down to the beach in the morning, sitting on the beach and doing some pranayama and a little bit of asana and meditation. That's my sadhana, my morning sadhana, my morning practice. So sadhana pada is the Sanskrit word for practice or discipline. And so what's happening here is that Patanjali is outlining two systems of yoga, so just two different aspects of yoga. Kriya yoga and Ashtanga yoga. Now, not Ashtanga from this idea of the Ashtanga yoga that you go and do in the Ashtanga studio. Even though that has come, obviously, the name that they've taken comes from this Ashtanga. But Ashtanga essentially means, Ashta is 8. Ashtanga is the 8-fold part of yoga. The 8 limbs of yoga. So Ashtanga yoga is just that, the 8 limbs of yoga. And Kriya yoga is an aspect of the Ashtanga which becomes, in a sense, the sadhana itself. So within our Ashtanga, within the 8 limbs, we have the yamas and the niyamas, the first 2 limbs, which are the morals and the ethics and the guidelines, in a sense. And within there's 3 of the niyamas, the 3 last niyamas, are tapas, svajaya, and ishvara pranidhana. Now those 3 together become the essence of Kriya yoga. Kriya yoga, the yoga of action, the yoga of this practice, in a sense. So tapas is sometimes translated as austerity, and it refers to often how we can train the physical body. But essentially it's really just this idea of disciplining the body and the mind. But that's kind of like the first half of this action. So, there's this actions involved here, which is a unique aspect of this 8 limbs or this part of yoga. I guess in a sense, there's always some kind of action, even if we're just working from a jnana path of yoga. Let's say we're in the path of Advaita Vedanta. So, for example, I'm here on this island. One of my teachers lives here. His name is Eric, and he's an Advaita Vedanta teacher. So I'm doing beach walks with him every morning and just absorbing his wisdom through just what he tells me, what he reveals to me. And this is the path of self-inquiry, Jnana Yoga or Advaita Vedanta, looking into the nature of who we are. There's something a little bit more passive about it, in a sense that there's not this kind of physical discipline involved. there's still a discipline of, I guess, inquiring into the nature, our minds, and who we are. But with Hatha Yoga, there is this idea of, no, we're going to work this sadhana. We're going to come to our mats. We're going to do this physical practice. We're going to do this breath work. We're going to then, really, really sit in meditation and work on calming the mind so we can experience this yoga chitta vritti nirodha. So tapas is the is the discipline of acting. And then svajaya is in a sense related to that aspect of self-inquiry. It's the self-study of the scriptures, of understanding the mind. Then there is Ishvara Pranidhana, which is, here I wrote, as devotion to God or pure consciousness, the self, and it's the surrender. So this is really, it's just that, it's the surrendering aspect. It's like tapas is like, okay, discipline, doing the work, action. Svajaya, going deeper into the inquiry. And Ishvara Pranidhana, you do the action, you do the work, and then you let go. You just surrender. So, in a sense, it's this translation of devotion, of sort of laying down the results or the expectation of any results of your actions to the feet of God, to the feet of pure consciousness, to the feet of divinity. So in a sense, this is where we're kind of bringing in different streams of yoga within this little encapsulation or part of these 8 limbs of yoga. And that stream of yoga is the stream of bhakti yoga, the yoga of devotion. So this is the yoga of devotion of just surrendering in absolute awe to the magnificence of creation, to the divinity within all of nature, within all of existence. So this is all within this sadhanapada. So Ashtanga Yoga then is essentially this 8-limbed path. And here they are. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 limbs. So the first 2 limbs are the yamas and the niyamas. And the yamas and the niyamas are the ways in which we interact within the world and with ourselves. In a sense, we could say that these are a bit more, almost in a sense, just helping us to become more sattvic. So, that from that worldly part, about worldly experience, worldly interactions. So the yamas are the restraints or ethics of behavior, the way in which we interact with the world around us. Now, I'm going to just mention them briefly here. I'm not going to go into details with the yamas and the niyamas, because in actual fact, what I would like you to do is to take this on as your homework. Each of you will grab a couple of yamas and niyamas and explore them more deeply, and then you're going to present this to the class. So you're going to do a little presentation on one yama and one niyama, so that we can learn from each other once you explore into these with more detail. So, but very briefly, these yamas, so there's 5 yamas and there's 5 niyamas, and we can see these almost like if we look at a lot of religions, for example, they often have these guidelines. Like in the Christian religion, it's the 10 Commandments in the Bible, the ethical way in which we live in the world. We don't steal, we don't We don't kill. We don't sleep with someone else's wife. We don't, do all these things which, just ethical ways in which to interact with the world. And so, they're helping us to become more sattvic, more balanced, more compassionate beings. So the yamas are ahimsa, which is non-harming. So I won't go into detail because I want you guys to what these are. But ahimsa is non-harming, non-violence. Says they're to be kind. It's kind of like it's the essence of ahimsa. If you're resonating the essence of ahimsa, then you're going to be a kind person. Satya is truthfulness. So it's to speak truthfully, to speak honestly, to be honest. Asteya means to not steal, to be generous. Brahmacharya, temperance, to respect boundaries. It's an interesting one. Whoever gets this one, I'll be interested to see your presentation on Brahmacharya. Because on a side note, these Yoga Sutras were really designed, really written for, in a sense, the renunciate. You've explored all the options of worldly life. You've decided, right, I'm fed up. I want to know my true nature. So I'm going to dive into my spiritual inquiry. Now, traditionally, in India, you become a renunciate once you go onto this path. So renunciate means that you essentially give up your worldly life. So you become a monk, you become a swami, you become a sadhu. All these various different ways of people who usually don a robe to say that, okay, I'm over with the worldly life, and I'm gonna just dedicate my life to the spiritual side of things. So now, not that even back then, not that one, it was essential that you had to become a renunciate to be a yogi. And this is where, a little bit later, there came in this idea of Tantra. Tantra was the essence of being able to be spiritual, in a sense, yet still live in the world. So Tantra is really just that. It's like finding or exploring spirituality, but still being in the world, as compared to the renunciate approach. The renunciate is like, no, turning my back on the world to go inwards, which is why then you would go into the ashram, into the temple, or into the forest. You would go away from the marketplace. You would renounce the worldly life. Whereas Tantra, from a tantric perspective, you would embrace the worldly life, but still embrace or explore your spiritual nature. So we are all tantric, whether you realize that or not. Because all of us, none of us have renunciated from the world. I don't think so. Whether you're living in an ashram or a temple or in a little cave somewhere in the Himalayas, I don't think so. We're all still having jobs. We're all having partners. We're all interacting in the world. But yet we are curious and interested in the mystery, in the deep mysteries of life. So that, from this yogi perspective, makes us a tantric. Simple as that. There's often this misconception, what is this whole idea of tantra? That's what Tantra is. It's spirituality, yet living in the world, which is why often it gets confused with this kind of sexual thing, because it can be, you know, we can still interact with a partner, we can look into the divinity of the sexual union and explore the beauty of that and the divine connection of the Shiva and Shakti from that aspect. But it's certainly not all just that. That's where you know, Western people get a bit confused and think, oh yeah, Tantra is all about sexual spirituality. It's about, you know, what we're doing right now is just, you know, interacting with each other. It's about seeing the divinity in nature. I'm just seeing this magnificent nature around me right now. It's absolutely divine. And that in itself is tantric. It's about seeing and connecting with the divinity within all of life. So I just went on that little side note because I'm looking here at brahmacharya, this yama, and the brahmacharya, from the aspect of the renunciate, it means to withdraw from sexual interaction, so withholding from any sexual activity. But ultimately, it's all about this idea of withholding or containing our energy. So, suggesting that through sexual interaction, we can exude energy, particularly from a male perspective of a male losing sperm, but from any perspective on an energetic level, there can be this, you know, interactive process with another, and as such, we can kind of lose, in a sense, some of our power. So the idea of brahmacharya is to not have sexual interaction, so we can withhold our power. But then, from this tantric perspective, we can actually say, well, hold on, no, we can actually have the sexual union, but if it's, as long as it's done in a mindful, respectful way, both to ourselves, to the person we're interacting with. So anyway, I won't go further into that because one of you will. And then there is aparigraha. Aparigraha means non-possessiveness. To be okay with our imperfections. So imperfections from this bodily and mind aspect. Because from our absolute aspect, we are absolutely perfect. But from our impermanent aspect, the body and the mind, we are imperfect. So we get hung up on our imperfections. We get hung up on, you know, they're not good enough, they're not beautiful enough, they're not whatever, you know, whatever things that we see as imperfect. We get hung up on that, which is one of the things that causes sufferings. The parigraha is to be okay with the imperfections and not be attached to any aspects of ourselves and our interactions with others. So those are the 5 yamas, as I said, in a nutshell. And then the niyamas are more towards the observances within us. So in a sense, a lot of those yamas are where we interact with others. And the niyamas are more, okay, the interactions within ourselves. So sausha is the first one. Sausha means purity, to clean the slate. So Sausha is, in a sense, it's sometimes called cleanliness as well. So it's obviously to be clean. We can be clean on all various levels. We can clean our body from an outer level. We shower, we bathe, we make sure that our body's healthy from that perspective. We keep clean on the inside. We take care of what we put into our body. So what do we eat? What is the food we eat? What is even cleanliness in the sense of what do we watch? What do we listen to? What do we expose ourselves to? So, Sausha. Then Santosha is contentment. Contentment, to be accepting. It's a beautiful one, Santosha, really. Santosha is this idea of acceptance, to realize, in a sense, that while we make an effort and we put in an effort to do things for a certain outcome, that ultimately we actually don't have any control of the outcome. It's a challenging one in a sense, but from this yogic perspective, we realize that ultimately, that while in one sense effort is required, that's where the tapas comes in. The result we have no control over. There's a potential result through a certain effort, but the absolute result, we don't know. We don't know how things are going to go tomorrow. Okay, we got an exam coming up, let's say, we make an effort, we study, we do what we can to make sure, we seem to know everything, but, who knows what the actual result will be. Maybe there'll be a question that we hadn't studied, so we don't know that we'll get 100%, or maybe even though we didn't study enough, all the questions were questions that we could answer and we get 100%. We really don't know the result, the ultimate result, the ultimate result of things. So it's finding this state of equanimity where we can just be okay. Just be content where things are at. And then we move into those last three, which are the kriya aspect, the tapas, the discipline, which we talked about, the svajaya, the self-study, and the ishvara pranidhana, the self-surrender. So those are our yamas and niyamas. So that's kind of like the beginning. It's just like getting those ethics right, of like, okay, I'm gonna be a good worldly person, gonna do all the effort to make sure I'm in the right place, doing the right things, and being sattvic in a sense. Tick, tick, tick all those boxes. That's like, that's kind of like the foundation. So as I said, yamas and niyamas, I'd like you guys to explore them further for us, but let's designate those in a moment, just before our break. But then we go into the third limb, which is asana. Asana, which is what we often come to yoga for. Most people in the West think that is what yoga is. It's this, bunch of postures that people do with their bodies. Yeah, it's a part of it. It's a big part of it, in a sense, being a whole limb dedicated to asana. realize that it's only just a part of it. It's just a means to an end. The means is to make the body strong and supple, so then we can sit and do the rest of the limbs. Really, that's the main reason. They're strong and supple also to have a vital body, so we can have a vital life. We're here experiencing the magnificence of this creation through this vehicle, and so we've been given this body. This body is a gift. This body and this mind is a blessing. It's a gift that we have been blessed with. And so, if you've been given something, you've been given, let's say, a new car. Look after the car. You don't want it to be scratched and dented and bump it around. You're not going to put the wrong petrol in it. You make sure it gets serviced regularly. You want it to maintain its beauty, its integrity. So the asana is for that. The asana is to maintain the beauty and the integrity of this body. Make it strong, vital, healthy, so we can have a healthy, vital, and hopefully reasonably long life. In this experience of me and my life in this body and this mind. So we do the physical postures, asana. Then we have pranayam. So interesting, pranayam is often, the A on the end of pranayam is dropped. And this is just this kind of Sanskrit thing, where some ways of expressing or reading Sanskrit is to drop the A at the end. And my understanding is that it depends on where you are in India. The northern style, I think, drops the A, and the southern style doesn't drop the A, something like that. But somehow pranayam is usually spoken as having dropped the A. Some people say pranayama because that's how they read it, that's how you read it. But I would suggest, if you can, just get in the habit of calling it pranayam. Drop the A at the end. Pranayam is the control of the prana. So I think we might have looked into the koshas of the body before. The koshas are the 5 bodies. The Annamaya kosha is the physical body. The Pranamaya kosha is the energetic body. It's where the nadis are. The channels that move and hold the prana. Because our bodies need some kind of energy, our body and our mind need some kind of energy to be able to move it, to be able to animate it. And that energy is the prana. Prana is the source of this consciousness. It's our life force. And so pranayam is the act of using the breath to enhance and control and move this life force. So we breathe naturally, we breathe without thinking. It's an autonomic system of ours. But we have many systems of the body, which we also explore. Cardiovascular system, the system of the blood. We have the endocrine gland system, the musculoskeletal system, lymphatic system. Then the respiratory system. So all the systems of the body are just autonomic, meaning that we don't consciously control them. They just happen. This is part of the magic of this human body that we have. The intelligence behind us is moving it without our conscious minds having to understand it even. It just happens. But the respiratory system is one that we can actually consciously control. It's said that some of the others can be as well, but we really need quite a deep abilities to be able to control, say, the heartbeat or whatnot. And often even the other systems by and by controlled through the control of the respiratory system. The respiratory systems, it's not really that one system, any system is more important than another, but in a sense the respiratory system is super important because it helps to then stabilize some of the other systems as well. So for example, when we're stressed, we're stressed and our heartbeat is stronger and the hormones are rushing through the body, all the stress hormones are rushing through, and you're sweating, your lymphatic system's on overdrive, and all the systems of the body are in overdrive when we're stressed. When we control our respiratory system, we know, okay, stress is happening, I'm stressed, I need to do something about this. Okay, I'm going to control my breath. I'm going to take some slow, deep breaths so I can consciously control my breath. Once the breath is controlled, then the other systems start to calm down as well. So pranayama becomes the act of controlling our breath to be able to control our energy. And then we have all these different rhythms of pranayama which enhance this energetic aspect, so we can vitalize us, give us greater sense of energy, or it can calm us down. And then by and by, working this pranayama practice is a way to enhance this energetic system of the body, the nadis, the energy channels. So the energy channels, or the nadis, is where the prana moves through the body. And then ultimately becomes the way in which we can invite in this kundalini energy. Kundalini energy resides in the pranic system of our body. It's an encapsulation of Shakti power, of Shakti energy, pure force, you could say, in the base chakra. And so working pranayama helps to prepare the energetic system of the body for the potential awakening or greater expansion of this kundalini life force. So in a sense, this yogic path has this alignment also with this potential kundalini movement and awakening, which, for example, if you were just purely an Advaita Vedantin, you've got no interest in that because you're not working with this pranayama, with this asana, with this practice, which is not the only, but it's the most common way for this kundalini power to happen. Because the kundalini awakening is not the be-all end-all. It's not kaivalya. So remember kaivalya, if we go back up there, is the last pada. We haven't gone there yet. Down here, kaivalya pada is the last pada, which is liberation. Kundalini awakening isn't necessarily liberation. It can be. Kundalini awakening can take us to liberation, but not usually. Usually it's an experience, and it's a beautiful experience, it's a magical, mystical experience. But in a sense, it's an experience that then prepares us for this liberation. Liberation doesn't have to happen through Kundalini awakening. Liberation can happen without the Kundalini. And Kundalini awakening isn't full liberation. So that's something just to really get into our heads. It's, we often, the Bull Kundalini is the be all end all. No, it's not. It can lead us to liberation, but it doesn't necessarily. Someone can have a Kundalini awakening and then get completely back into their old habits and back into suffering and back into worldly stuff. Whereas once you have Kaivalya, once you're fully liberated, there's no turning back. You're always in that state of non-dual awareness. So pranayama is the control of the prana for all those various reasons. And then pratyahara is the fifth limb of yoga. And this is kind of like where we sort of tether between, in a sense, this sadhana, this practice, to the more inwardly focused meditative part, which is called samayana. Samayana is the last three limbs of yoga. So the first five limbs of yoga we call our sadhana. That is our sadhana. That's our practice. Our practice is to be good, to do the right thing in the world, do our yamas and our niyamas. Practice is to sit on our mats and do our asana, to work with our breath, pranayama. And then pratyahara is the last part of the sadhana, which is kind of like the gateway to the samayana, the last three limbs. Pratyahara is the withdrawal of the senses. So this is where we start to tap into our inward work. So up until now, there's an aspect of outward work. I mean, pranayama is inward in a sense, but it's still this kind of using the body, using the breath. Whereas once you work with pratyahara, you're really focusing inwards. So pratyahara is often translated as withdrawal of the senses, meaning that the senses that we have are outwardly focused. Pratyahara is where we let go of the outward focus of the mind. So the mind is a lens. The mind is a lens that experiences the world. And in that experiential happening, the mind is outward focused through the senses. We see things, we hear things, we taste things, we touch things, we smell things. We experience the world through the senses. Nothing wrong with that. It's a wonderful part of our existence. We can be very tantric through our senses, experiencing the divinity of the mystery of life through our senses. Yet there comes a time in this practice of yoga where we want to flip the lens. We want to flip the lens of the mind to look inwards, to gaze inwards, to connect to our spirit, to connect to our inner essence, our inner true nature. So this is where we start to go into meditation. So dharana becomes the sixth limb. These last three limbs are called the samayana. Samayana is translated as yoga proper, the experience of yoga. Sadhana is the practice, is the preparatory steps, is the working towards yoga. The last three limbs are the experience of yoga. So dharana is concentration. Dharana is working to find a point of focus to rest our attention on, so that we are in full pratyahara, we withdraw from the senses. Now the senses are still there, of course. it's still going to come back in and distract us. Whether it's a sound that you hear, smell that you smell, whatever. But often we can get into a meditative state where the senses, we don't really worry so much about them anymore. We hear a sound, but we let it go. We don't get involved with it. But ultimately, it's then to withdraw from that sense, the greatest sense, in a sense, of the mind itself and the thoughts that arise. The chitta vrittis. Chitta vritti is the movement, the consciousness. Chitta is our consciousness, our mind. So the chitta vrittis are happening all the time. The vrittis, the fluctuations, the thoughts. Now, when we look at the way in which the mind works, we know that we have these different brain wave patterns. The alpha, the beta, the theta, the delta, and the gamma, these different brain waves. And, when we're thinking a lot, when we're very active in our minds, the brain waves are faster, meaning that there's more activity in the mind. And that activity is simply the vrittis in Sanskrit. Vritti is the activity of the mind. Now we know that when we work with meditation, the activity slows down. And this is measured by science. Science measures this through all the wonderful measuring tools that science has created. So we could say that we get into this kind of Zen state when the mind waves slow right down. And we do that in a yoga practice through concentration, through dharana. So dharana is this idea of resting our attention. Now everything else has also helped us at this point. If we work some pranayama in itself just helps to slow down those brainwave patterns. So that's already a wonderful tool. It's helped us to slow down the brainwave patterns. The asana has helped the body to be strong and stable, so we can sit with this practice from a traditional point of view. So it's not that we have to always be sitting, like Osho is this wonderful modern day yogi, for example, who says, forget sitting and doing meditation. Your Western minds have no chance to yoga chitta vritti nirodha by sitting down, because you guys are way too busy in your minds. So Osho has all these cathartic kriyas, shaking, screaming, and doing all that. I don't know if you've done an Osho meditation before. You can do one at Summer Healing with Tommy. I think he does it every, I'm sure what day, Tuesday mornings or something. Give it a go, just to try the Osho technique. It's great way of doing cathartic work to get beyond your minds, cathartic way. But, traditionally, don't forget this is written thousands of years ago, traditionally, and from the point of view of a renunciate, traditionally we sit down, we do our sadhana, we slow those chitta vrittis down, and then we get to this point of dhyana. Dhyana is meditation proper. Seventh limb of yoga is dhyana. So dhyana is where fluctuations cease. It's where we find that spaciousness, those pauses between the thoughts, the gaps. And then ultimately samadhi. So each of these we can go into a lot more detail, of course, but just giving you the overview. Samadhi is then the absorption into that state of non-dual awareness, into the true nature of our being, to consciousness itself. Samadhi is absorption, is fully in that bliss state. There's no mind in samadhi, just in bliss. So a nice place to be in samadhi Remember, it's just an experience, and ultimately, Kaivalya is the full liberation. So then, just very quickly, we can then say that there's another pada, the Vibhuti pada. So the Vibhuti pada is actually it incorporates the Samayana. So those last three limbs are actually talked about in Vibhuti pada. So the the sadhana, which is talked about in Sadhana pada. So the Sadhana pada, the second chapter, is all about the first 5 limbs of yoga, essentially. And then the last 3 limbs is talked about in Vibhuti pada. But then it also goes into the siddhis. Vibhuti then describes the siddhis. And siddhis are these kind of powers that happen by and by through the practice of yoga. Supranormal powers, they're called. So they are powers such as the power of healing, such as the power of extrasensory perception, power of levitation. Powers that, a lot of us might think, is this real? Is this just a fantasy? Surely we don't really get these powers. But the thing with these powers is really that they are just, in a sense, they're given to us along the way as a taste for the divinity, taste for the potential. And once you realize the true nature of things, then nothing is impossible. Anything is absolutely possible. Anything can happen in this world, anything at all. And the unexpected happens all the time. Just that we get very caught up in the way in which we see things. We just think, oh yeah, this is this and this is that. We put everything in its box and we don't consider some of the greater possibilities of how things could manifest themselves in this world. So in Vibhuti pada describes some of these powers that can arise to give us a taste, a further taste of divinity expressing itself in mysterious and magnificent ways. Now the issue becomes that we can get caught up in these powers. They can boost our ego. If you suddenly wake up one day and you've got the power to heal someone, you can just touch someone and you heal their wound or their injury or whatever. Imagine how that's going to play out. Oh, look at me. Oh, great, I've got this power of healing. Oh, no, I'm just going to go around healing everyone. But you can see how that can become an egoic booster. And really, ultimately, we need to dissolve the hold that the ego has on us, because it's the ego that keeps us locked into this idea of individuality, of identifying with this body and mind. The ego is what does that. So, in a sense, these powers are kind of like tests for the yogi. The yogi reaches a certain point, and then the yogi can get tested. Are you going to keep identifying with your egoic nature? Let's give you some incredible power. That then makes it really hard to let go of the identity of you and this power. So this is this idea that sometimes these powers can arise, but not for us to get attached to them, which is why you never hear about them. Because the yogi who comes into this power isn't going to share this with the world. Because by sharing it, it becomes a boost to their ego. And then they can't we can't let go of that entrapment. We'll be stuck. It becomes an obstacle for the yogi who seeks liberation. And so the final part is kaivalya. Kaivalya is literally translates to isolation, but as used in the sutras stands for emancipation or liberation. Where other texts often employ the term moksha. So this describes the process of liberation and the reality of the transcendental ego. So, I'm going to have a little pause. Before we have a full pause, any questions or comments so far? Remember, you're on mute, so I can't hear you. You have to unmute yourself if you want to say something. Nothing? All perfectly clear? Okay. Well, wonderful. Glad it's all sinking in somehow.
I mean, it's not perfectly clear, obviously. I mean, at least for me. But I think it's kind of things that goes day by day while you are practice yoga and stuff like this. Most of those concepts, especially in this book, because I try to read it. I mean, maybe it's hard for me because reading in another language can be challenged too. But I think I was thinking that even if I read that book in my language, it can be challenging too. Yeah, definitely are things really interesting. But as I said before, yeah, you need to like practice and slowly, day by day, understand better all of this.
Absolutely.
Because it's even like, yeah.
Absolutely, Christina. That's you know, you hit the nail on the head there, because it's if we haven't,
It's a process.
yeah, if we haven't looked into this spiritual work, then it's completely different from everything else we've been taught, everything else we've learned so far in our lives, which is all about this worldly interactive stuff. You know? This is it's talking about discovering and understanding our true nature, which we can't anyway talk about and understand with our minds actually anyway. So it's so tricky. It's such a mysterious and challenging thing to do. But yet it's fascinating. I mean, I find it fascinating. I hope you do too, because it's
No, it is.
It's
It
really
is.
looking into the mystery, and it's the ultimate subject. Really, it's the ultimate thing that anyone should and can do in their life, is to really look into the true nature of us and this, and everything. So yeah, it's not easy, but we just do it little by little and bit by bit, and that's why, as I said, we're not going to read the whole thing. We're not here to know it back to front, and it might take your whole life. It might take a couple of lives before you can really get it. But don't have that expectation that we need to have a timeline. Just enjoy the journey of slowly absorbing and understanding this process. And the beauty is really, and this is what I can say, I guess, from my own experience, is that it just becomes, over time, it becomes a more and more delightful process. The more you start to sort of understand yourself from this deeper perspective, is the easier life becomes, easier living becomes, and the more delightful.
I believe that we already doing this. By the time we decide to start this course, and even simple like start yoga, probably all of us or most of us start yoga just to try, and all of a sudden it's become something that you can't stay without anymore. So we are already in this process, I think, and all life in general, like it's a process, you know what I mean? Everything happened for a reason, and you are here for a reason. So we are already into that. It's just that I think we need to realize this more often during the day, everyday life. You know, everything is happening, and sometimes we say, like for example, if something bad happened to me, for example, I always say like, oh, I'm so unlucky, everything happened to me, blah blah blah, these things. But we should like step back a little bit and think maybe why, or see what's going on after something bad happened. So we need to be really focused on today, right now, and what's going on. So yeah.
Absolutely right, Christina. Thank you so much. That's yeah, spot on. Yeah, I mean, we are exactly that, all on this journey of self-discovery, essentially.
Yeah.
And you know, it's not a competition. It's just, you know, everyone's at where they're at on this journey. Whether even those who aren't doing yoga are still on that journey, they just don't know it. But we've come to yoga, and now we kind of starting to understand. Oh yeah, okay, so yeah, on this journey. and then the more we dive into it, the more we start to understand this journey, to fully realize it. Good work, team. Let's go and enjoy the journey of lunch, shall we? And
So because I need to leave at 3:30.
yeah.
And technically this should be my last class.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Correct.
So I wanted to say goodbye to everybody. It's been nice to meet you. Polly, the kombucha is perfect. I love it. Just a question, and Mickey, to you too. The kombucha, because I'm leaving for 2 months. So for 2 months, I will probably not touch that. I will definitely not touch that. I was wondering, how can I save the Scooby without lost it? Because I was thinking like maybe I can frozen that, but still no. It's
Welcome back, and we're here for our last hour and a half discussing the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. Just a quick recap. What can anyone share with me so far? What have you learned so far? What are just anything at all that came to you, Nikki?
Basically what I think I was only sort of trying to interpret it. So basically it's what I'm sort of feeling in myself. like my life has really changed over the last 2.5 years. And with what we're talking about today, it really resonates with me. Yeah, like you know, trying to put it into words. Yeah, just letting go of like expectations, not holding on to things, and just letting everything flow in life, basically. Yeah. Just finding I'm finding this whole new world and this whole new chapter in my life. It's just a totally different journey for me now. Yeah.
I love that. Thank you for that share. It's beautiful. That's yeah, that's often what happens when we're called upon this journey. That's
Oh, it's exciting. I only wish it happened in my 20s and not my 50s, but that's okay.
it is what it is. Whenever it happens is when it's meant to be. So there's no
Exactly. So true. So true.
nothing to worry about. How about you, Tony?
Yeah.
Anything from your end? Anything to share? You're on mute though. I don't know if you're able to unmute yourself there, because I can't unmute you myself. And I know you're not on your computer, you're on Amy's computer, so maybe you don't know how. Oh no, there you go.
Oh yeah, I've got it.
You got it. Well done.
I'm down as Amy there by the looks of it. But yeah, it's the essence of yoga, the 8 limbs of yoga, the sutras, and we follow those 8 limbs to come about like a practice. What is it called? A sadhana.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Good one. Yeah, that's good. You got that word, sadhana. That's a good
Sadhana.
good word to get, you know, to remember.
Yeah. Pick that up somewhere.
Well done. Trish, anything at all to share so far? Anything that's
I think just the roadmap for the mind, you know, just going through that just like everybody else. And I think, you know, the 8 limbs, and I will certainly we'll start reading this book tonight. Absolutely. But again, I guess, you know, to get to this point in your life, I'm here because I'm meant to be at this particular point in, you know, I guess finding, you know, my purpose on a deeper level. And yeah, look, you know, the chitta, you know, the bliss, you know, stillness, and just having an understanding from a different perspective. And that's what I'm looking for, having that skill set.
wonderful? That's great.
Mm.
Yeah, the curiosity is there now, isn't it? It's been sparked.
Yeah, it is. You know, it's exciting to move forward. Even, you know, yesterday, you know, I was learning about duality, and that was, you know, it's just there's so much ignorance when you think that, you know, people see through your eyes, or, you know, how you perceive, you know, what a kangaroo is to you, and to somebody else a kangaroo can be a pest, you know. So something so simple that I'm finding, and I think it's in all of these sutras, that they're all going to have already have had an effect on me, and being open to that too.
Fantastic.
Mm.
Thanks, Trish.
So thank you.
No, thank you.
Fresh ones are they?
And Polly's there, but she was there. I just saw she said she's currently reading Iyengar's Light on Life, and it's amazing. So Iyengar does the light on a few things. Light on yoga is his original text, which was the light on mostly asana, which is a great textbook for the asana. It's got light on pranayam, light on the Yoga Sutras, and then he's also got this light on life. I haven't actually read that one. I haven't got that one myself, so I was just going to ask Polly about that one because I'm curious. I assume it's a light on sort of maybe an expansion of the yamas and niyamas. There you are, Polly. So I'm curious as to the light on life because I don't have that.
Turn it up. How do I do it? Set my computer.
Do you know?
Oh,
She's coming. She's gone.
oh, cool.
Awesome.
So, Polly, I was just asking you about the light on life. What is that about? Because I don't have that. I haven't read that. Is that sort of an expansion on the yamas and niyamas? Yeah.
Yeah, so it's oh, that's really off-putting hearing my voice echo. Sorry. Just one sec. It's Tony.
Oh, does that work?
I think so. No. All right, I'll just try and drown it out. It's like an integration of the yoga teachings for the sort of everyday man who doesn't want to, woman, person who doesn't want to detract themselves from society, and just the benefits of asana, how important that is. Thank you. How important that is for well, everything. We need the asana to be able to do the pranayama. We need the pranayama to be able to do the meditation, and just kind of like a breakdown of his personal journey, and how that sort of evolved, and how yoga played such a big part in that. So I'm only about halfway through so far, but loving it. Can't put it down. Sorry, what was that?
Yeah, sorry, I was muted. I was saying thank you. Sounds amazing, and that's maybe another one to add to our libraries, which I don't have. So as I said, to put into my library. Let's move on. So I'm going to move back to that little document that I had actually. Just before I do that. Just before I do that, where is it? Just wanted to show you something else quickly. Where is it? Not as organized as I thought I was. Okay, I'll just let that one go. I guess, look, just briefly, I was just going to show you an image, but I don't have it handy. Just very briefly, just so you know, it's just interesting to understand this, is that the Yoga Sutras philosophy is essentially derives. So the wisdom of Patanjali essentially derives from Samkhya. So this is something else that's, I suppose, interesting to understand. The Samkhya is the school of philosophy from India. So we've talked about Advaita Vedanta as the sort of non-dual philosophy. Samkhya is actually the dualistic philosophy of India. So not here to say one is better than the other, but with Samkhya, and not to, I mean, they all go hand in hand ultimately. I mean, there's only one truth ultimately.